Hey guys, episode number 5 of the Level Up Project. I'm with somebody super awesome. He is a good friend of mine, and he gave me a short skit to introduce him. It's so short that I have to read it. So, Chevy, fractional CMO and partner of Mars Studio, founded in 1999 at New Jersey Institute of Technology and celebrating his 25-year anniversary. Congratulations.
Appreciate it, Elias. Thanks for having me.
The highlight is 66,000% ROI on a client project.
Yeah,
Now I can put my phone away because everything else is going to be chill.
sounds good.
So we're going to talk about 3 main topics, and it's sales, marketing, and branding from the man himself. So how it works is, one is for aspiring entrepreneurs, sales, marketing, and branding. Kind of break down each key piece, kind of. And I feel like we would start with sales, getting new business, but you're the man for that. And then current business owners, the difference between sales and marketing. Because even me, as a agency owner, I have no idea how to explain it. I don't even know what the difference between sales and marketing is.
Yeah.
And then you bring in another thing, which is branding, which just reminds me of like Coca-Cola or like the big companies that always run commercials, even though they're huge. So I kind of want to get your insight on that.
Yeah, so that's actually, it's interesting how you put it, because it wasn't really top of mind for me to talk about it the way you put it. But you just mentioned that, it starts with sales. But I think that's kind of like an old thought process.
Okay.
So let me see if I can break it down in the time that we have, though. So think of sales, think of opportunities as water, right? It's cash flow, liquidity, right? Liquid assets, think of it that way. And when you have water, you need a vessel to carry it, right? And if you don't have a vessel to carry it, then it's very difficult to get it from point A to point B. So when we think of leads, lead nurturing, lead conversion, which then ultimately becomes a client or an opportunity, you can't start with the sale, the liquid part, the final product, if you don't have the vessel to carry it. So I like to think of, I like to start with branding in terms of if I was giving someone advice in terms of reevaluating their business, or if it's a young entrepreneur looking to get started, I would tell them to focus on branding first. And what is branding, right? Branding to me is understanding your target audience. Why? Because we're not creating a brand that you or I like. We're creating a brand that our audience likes, that resonates with our audience, that basically articulates the value proposition to the audience, right? Make sense?
Yeah. Just small thing, not to cut you off.
Yeah.
Dude, I love how you talk in imagery. when you talk, I just see like cartoons in my mind. I'm thinking about the water, I'm thinking about the vessel, but
Yeah, so I love antidotes, and I like to think that way,
Right.
because I think it's easier for people to understand. So typically when you want to do business, everybody starts thinking about growth and revenue and opportunity. Sales. And the first thing they want to do is go grab the faucet and turn up the faucet and get the liquid, get the opportunities out of that faucet as fast as possible, right? But what if there's something wrong with the pipe, right? So branding to me is the faucet itself. Let's call it a business pipeline or your business visualization. That's your brand, right? So, and that's going to be different than sales. We'll get to sales in a minute, but let's focus on the branding. And that 66,000% return on investment is actually a good story. If we have time to it, we'll come back. It was meant to be a teaser, if nothing else. We always like to throw out our low number and our high number and really focus on, what we can realistically achieve. But you can achieve more if you understand, the purpose of a brand. The brand, again, is focused on the audience, the persona, who they are, what their needs are, and how you articulate your value to them. So when we talk about a brand, a company name should resonate with its audience, right? The icon should resonate in terms of a visual image, in terms of what it is that you have to offer. Your tagline should have some clarity in who you're going to serve and what you're going to do for them, because that's just going to attract them more to your brand. So we can visualize, that pipe, okay? Mm-hmm. If it's rusted and that's your visualization of your business and you have holy water coming out of the pipe, No one's going to want to drink from it because
Definitely.
they're going to assume that the water is contaminated somehow. You could have the best product, the best opportunities coming out of that pipe, but it's rusted, so people get the wrong impression.
Right.
On the other hand, you could have a gold pipe, right? And you can have brown sewage water coming out of it, and there'll be somebody that'll grab it and put it on their face and go, "It's a mud mask. It'll make your years younger." So we're all guilty of this, right? Product packaging and being deceived by what it means. So what we would prefer is that you have a good product and then good packaging, a good visualization. So if you're a med spa, you have half a bamboo with the water trickling over the top, right? If you're Elon Musk, you have space aluminum, carbon fiber, pipe. And that's not to be confused. Your business visualization and your brand shouldn't be confused. Your business pipeline shouldn't be confused with like a sales funnel, right? Think of the visual pipeline as kind of, horizontal, but the sales funnels are vertical. So your brand is really focused on, your client and understanding your client and creating that persona. Then we focus on marketing. We're still not at sales, right? Because again, the thought process is that how do I get those opportunities and capture those opportunities? So to me, marketing is how do you then communicate your brand to your target audience? What channels do you use, like this podcast?
Right.
What mediums do you use? Do you use social media? Do you use Facebook? Do you use Twitter? Do you use Instagram within social media? Do you use direct mail? Do you use a brochure, a flyer, pamphlet, an invitation? So there's a ton of different mediums and channels. And again, it would be dependent on not what I want or what you want, but what our target audience, what our avatar, where do they live, right? Where do they reside? What's the age demographic, right? What's the educational level? So again, there's going to be nuances. And sometimes people take, what I would say is like a generic approach. Oh, I'm trying to reach a CEO, so they must be on LinkedIn. Whereas there's probably not that many CEOs on LinkedIn. They're probably on Facebook, playing golf, right? Or whatever else that they're looking at boats or they're looking at their next vacation. And if I want to get a message in front of them, then I have to understand where they spend their time, right? So I think if you have this business pipeline, right, this pipe that's not broken, it's visually attractive, there's no cracks in it, right, where the information can flow through. Think of poor content or poor messaging as gunk in the pipe. You could have all the opportunities in the world coming through, but opportunities could be leaking because there's a crack in the pipe, or there's gunk or poor messaging in the pipe and it's backing up. But if you have a good brand, good content, a good pipe that can carry it, then you look credible and you're going to get those opportunities to go through that pipe. The next thing is kind of like that sales. Think of sales as the pot or the cup or whatever it is that you want to use to capture those opportunities coming through the pipe. Because if you don't have sales, if you don't have sales collateral, if you have no way of nurturing or converting the lead or the opportunity, what's going to happen? You're just going to kind of hold your hands out there and those opportunities are going to fall through your fingers. We're going to try to use our words to engage those opportunities, not having sales collateral or sales funnels that can clearly articulate your business's value proposition. Does that make sense?
It seems like all three go together.
There you go.
All three are important. And it all starts with branding, and it goes to marketing, and then it goes to sales.
That's where I would start.
Just so that I make sure that I'm clear. What are some brands that would you say Coca-Cola has a good brand, for example? Apple? Would those be brands that are set on the branding stage? They're probably set on the marketing stage, and they're probably set on the sales stage.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do something I probably shouldn't do, which is push back against the question.
Okay.
The reason I want to push back against the question is because a lot of times you get young entrepreneurs, small business owners, and they try to replicate or duplicate what IBM or Apple or Dell is doing. They'll read a book by Apple's COO on the proper steps to marketing and what you should do.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I wrote a book and I got X factor. Well, you're not the COO of Apple, and when you write your book, no one's going to care, to be really honest with you, right? So it's different. And a lot of times when you have fractional CMOs that are consulting clients, they've never really executed their plans. And not only that, they were the CMO of Marriott or the CMO of Coca-Cola. And even though overarchingly their theories may relate to your business, implementing those theories and having an understanding of how they would apply to a startup entrepreneur with only $50,000 to start up is very different. You can't do, or you don't have access to the same networks and the same things, right? So are they doing it well? Yeah, they're doing it well, but they're already established gigantic brands. They can make massive mistakes and still come out unscathed, right? In a way, companies like Nike, right? They actually leverage their brand beyond just self-promotion. They're now leveraging their brand for societal impact, right? Yeah. So it's apples and oranges. When it comes to my main point is that a lot of times entrepreneurs, they fracture their marketing and they fracture their process. What I mean by that is, I need to hire a guy to do a logo. And then I need to hire a guy to do my website. Oh, I want to do the direct mail piece. Oh, I'm going to hire this college graduate to do my social media management, right? Yeah. And then what ends up happening over time, they've built all these different kind of like avenues and messages, and they're fractured. They're not cohesive. So I think if there was one takeaway that I would want people to hear today is that marketing is getting more and more sophisticated, and these pieces are more and more correlated than they've ever been. So it's really important to understand marketing and sales integration. And we haven't even touched on or talked about the technological integration of these pieces, right? So you have your website on a content management system, but then when someone fills out a form, it goes into your CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce, and then it goes into a MailChimp or Constant Contact in order to do like the promotional sales emails. And at the end of the day, you don't start with the solution or the output. You start with understanding who your audience is. What is your value proposition? What are the benefits you're going to bring to them, whether you're selling a product or whether you're selling a service. And then what you do is you make sure that message is clearly disseminated across all those channels and that they're cohesive and work well together. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have a lot of waste. It's like having cracks in the pipe. You can keep turning the pressure on, keep spending money. So that handle is advertising. Right. That's the sales dollars, right? And you can turn it up, and you get better flow, but those cracks and the gunk are going to block the opportunities from getting through. And if you don't have a good sales funnel to capture those leads, convert those leads, they're going to fall through your hands. So you're spending more money and getting a poor ROI where you could spend a quarter on the dollar if you focus on the right things first before getting into the advertising dollars. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a whole world.
It is. It is. It is definitely a world. And that's that. I'm glad you actually said that. Marketing also tends to be an afterthought for most entrepreneurs. Right? So most young entrepreneurs, the first thing they're going to do is go do what? Right? Set up an LLC, pick out a name, right? And then they'll go hire an accountant to count the money they don't have, right? So it's backwards. I would advise young entrepreneurs, the first person you want to meet is a CSO, a chief sales officer. Go have a conversation with a CMO and ask, what do I need to make my idea successful? It won't cost you anything. I can actually give some really good advice on how to do it for free, right? How? Go to a chamber. Go to a chamber event. Go to a Rockville chamber, county chamber, city chamber, U.S. chamber, wherever. And there's going to be all these business leaders there, right, who started businesses and say, hey, people love to talk. Yeah. Right? Why am I here? Right? You invited me. Hey, Chevy, you want to come and talk? I was like, yeah, man, I'll come and talk. Why not? People love to be heard. Right? People love to share and give something. Especially, I would say most entrepreneurs might probably that way. You might meet a couple that are just in it for the money. Yeah. But I think if you go to these chamber events, you're going to meet people in marketing. Right? Hey, by the way, I have a new business. Can I, take you to lunch and maybe pick your brain? Most of them are going to turn around and say yes. Hey, I heard, thanks for the introduction. I heard you talking about your business. Would you have time to grab some lunch? And then ask them, don't start with how did you start your business? Ask them, hey, what would you have done with marketing differently? Would you have started that sooner? Where are you with sales? How do you get your clients, right? Talk about how to generate the revenue first before worrying about, right, the LLC or, the counting of it.
Right.
No, you can count your own money if you don't have a lot, right? You already know what you have. So you don't need to worry about those aspects until you get to the point of having a business kind of like strategy, I would say.
Wow.
Does that
Thank
help?
you. That's awesome. That's everything kind of full circle.
Yeah.
And then where to find the right people.
Yeah.
And when you're starting out, a lot of people, lack the capital. So going to chambers of commerce, really networking.
And even if you have the capital,
why
you don't want to, what the goal is to not learn the hard way.
Right.
I mean, we're not kids anymore. I remember not listening to my parents until I made the mistake myself, right? And then I went back and I told my mom I was sorry for all the things I did wrong, Mom.
What was that mistake? Was there one? One or there's too many?
There was plenty. And I'm sure you're guilty of a few too. But I guess, with maturity and time, we'd start learning from those behaviors and we start learning from those mistakes. And the whole goal is don't spend your initial seed capital. Look, if you have cash flow and you want to experiment in R&D and try a couple different things and do some A/Bs because you have a gut feeling, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have like not one opportunity, right, then it makes sense to do your due diligence. Ask other people. If you show me, what's that adage? You show me someone successful and I'll show you someone that's failed 100 times.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. Because what it takes, people think like being your own boss is easy, right? It's not. It's 10 times harder than working for someone else because there's no one to pass the buck to. Because when you fail, there's no one to pick you up. You got to pick yourself up, right? So if you got to pick yourself up and you got to figure out how to do it right, why not take the time to do your due diligence, measure twice and cut once because you'll have less waste. I mean, it just makes sense. So that would be my advice to people. Do your homework, talk to people, have conversations, and then, get to know people and see what they bring to the table. But at the end of the day, we really want to focus on starting with a strategic plan before you go out in there and start doing stuff. I know for most of us, we're going to get, I think most entrepreneurs are also very aggressive. They're very self-motivated. So the first thing they want to do is what? Go out there and do something.
Yeah, get some
just
sales.
Do it. I'm guilty of it. I remember when we started, let's just to make this a little bit more interesting rather than sticking to all the marketing minutia. Yeah. I remember when me and my business partner started Mars Studio, unlike Bill Gates, we didn't have a garage. We had a carport. So we decided to build our studio in the attic of his house. And I can't believe I'm saying half the things that I'm saying right now to you because I was exactly the other kid, right? So when we built our business in the attic, we didn't have enough money to like go out and buy furniture, nor did we want to. We just decided to go to Home Depot, buy some plywood and some 2x4s, and the attic had like one of those like lofted ceilings, so we made a desk all the way around. And I remembered I would just take the 2x4s, take the saw and cut them and then stick it under there and see if it was the right size. Sometimes it was a little long and I'd just trim a little bit more off and stick it under. And sometimes it was way short and it was a piece of wasted wood.
Yeah.
And that's because I was in a hurry. I wanted to open up and I wanted to get started and I wanted to set up the computers and I wanted to get going, right? So, and then what happens is you have a lot of waste. So we had a lot of wasteful moments like that. And whether it's buying technology or buying equipment, we had a film and photography studio. So sometimes you buy things you don't need because you haven't taken the time because you want to get started really fast. So I think it's a mistake. And we can all make it on different levels. But there's a reason why that happens. And the reason why that happens is because there's 5% of what we know. There's 5% of what we don't know that we don't know. And then there's 90% of what we don't know at all, right? So one of the reasons why I still go to chamber events and I still go to these networking ecosystems is because I'm trying to hear and listen and learn the things that I don't know, right? So that's why I say start with a conversation. Ask someone to go to lunch with you. Pick their brain because what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase that bucket, reduce the bucket of things that you don't even know about. But I think that's what's interesting about it.
Thanks. You touched on some really, really good points, and I go through that as well. I just want to go fast. I just want to get things done as soon as possible. Yeah. Now you're like, slow down, plan strategically, talk with people, and you can cut out all those mistakes.
Yeah.
That one's really hitting me right now. That's exactly what I needed to hear right now, which is what I hope a lot of people are too, and get through that. Oh man, I'm sure you went through a lot of interesting challenges. Talk to me about them.
So I mean, people always say, if you could go back and do it all over again, would you? Or you or would you change anything?
Change it, right?
Would you change anything? Yeah. No, I wouldn't change anything, because I learned from those opportunities, and I think being open-minded and recognizing that you can learn a lot from your mistakes as long as you have a very positive way of thinking and seeing things. I think it works. But there's parts of my life that I didn't have that type of thinking. And if I failed, it would demoralize me. Right. It would knock me down. It would take me a month to pick myself back up off the ground. One particular moment comes to mind. When we were first starting out, we didn't have the Coca-Cola portfolio or the these bigger vendors. And when we were looking at commercial space in 2008, they wouldn't even talk to you if you weren't a Chipotle, right? Oh, really? Yeah, because if you wanted, but the ecosystem completely changed in 2008 with the crash of the market and the economy, and it opened the door to some small fish being able to get some of these spaces. But they were still giving you a temp space. It wasn't like they were giving you a 10-year lease, right? Right. Anyways, we did everything we could do, really established the business, and all of a sudden, 30-day notice, we got a notice to vacate the space. Oh my gosh. And we said, well, why? We offered full rent, and we offered we were like, hey, we could be. They're like, well, you're not a B2B. Excuse me, you're not a B2C, you're a B2B. Mm-hmm. Even though we had positioned ourselves to be like the FedEx Kinkos of marketing and had this really beautiful office where people could walk in and engage us, and it just wasn't what they were looking for. So. Again, what's funny about that, the first question I asked my real estate agent when we were looking at our next space is, do you want us? Right? And I thought that was a really good question to ask. Do you want us? Do you want our business? Do we fit your mold? Right. And their answer was, yes, you're exactly who we're looking for. And they were willing to give us a 10-year lease.
Is that where you are now?
Yep. Folger Pratt.
Nice.
And I won't mention where we were before. Yeah. But Folger Pratt saw what we saw in ourselves, right? And that's important. If you are in business and you have a friend or a colleague or a person who's knocking down your idea or not supporting your idea, you're probably in the wrong ecosystem, right? You're trying to swim upstream. Why work harder than you need to? Surround yourself with people who are going to support your dreams, support your ambitions, support your goals, right? Nurture them, advise you. So that was the thing. We basically had these two different real estate agency groups, right? Management groups. And one of them didn't believe in us. They were simply using us, right? To be a warm body in the space until the economy got better and they could put who they had in their mind as the perfect relationship in the space. And it's interesting because the next 2-3 tenants that came into that space actually failed.
Really? Yep. And you have a nice space.
Well, and we were blessed with a much better space. So that was, and that's the thing, the concept of bad in my mind is a human man-made concept. I personally think if you slow down long enough to, see the silver lining, right? You'll see that there's an opportunity there, that there was God was maybe putting a plan together for you. And, but you have to be willing to get up and get it, right? Yeah. So like I said, sometimes you self-pity yourself and you pull the blanket over your head and you're unmotivated to do things. And then other times when you overcome those obstacles, the next time you get knocked down, you're like, I've been here, know what it feels like to be in the center of the ring on the mat. And you're like, I got 10 seconds to get back up or I'm going to lose this fight, right? So you just get back up and you do it. But that comes with experience. So that's why I would say I wouldn't change anything if I went back and did it again. Right? Because my failures are what helped me get to where I am today. But I would hope, regardless, you're still going to fail. Every entrepreneur, everybody's going to make mistakes. If you're a new dad, you're going to make mistakes, right? If you're a new husband, you're going to make mistakes. If you're a new wife, a new female, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah. The question is, how do we limit those mistakes? Right. How do we we don't need to compound them. We don't need to have more pain than is required. Because again, you're going to pay in sweat, blood, and equity one way or another. The question is, where are you going to spend that? So if somebody else has paved the road, like imagine this. Imagine you're going hiking, and there's an open trail, and it's leading up to the top of the mountain where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you try to follow that trail for as long as you could?
Yeah, definitely.
Unless there's something that you see that you can't reach, then there's a reason to go off the trail.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if there's a trail right over here and thorn bushes over here and trees and shrubs over here, you're not going to immediately go in through the thorn bushes or the trees and shrubs and start whacking things down. So why not follow the trail and see where it goes and then make a decision once you've come to the fork in the road or when the trail ends? Because then you're going to get cut up anyways, but at least still follow the path of least resistance, maybe to a degree, right? I know that, again, most entrepreneurs want to do it their way, but there's a time and place for that.
Yeah. What I'm really hearing here is you got to slow down to speed up. Yeah.
On a personal note, about 2-3 years ago, I went on a men's kind of like retreat. It was a mountaintop retreat. With about 50 good Christian men. And I remember talking to the Pastor Trent at the time. And you, Elias, you know me, I'm probably actually pretty chill right now sitting over here. I guess it's the ambiance or something about the place that's making me relaxed.
It's the energy.
That's the energy. It's good energy. It's got that woo-saw energy. But anyways.
Woo-saw energy? What is that, dude?
So I'm normally like moving 100 miles an hour. But it was interesting because I was talking to my pastor and he was telling me, and I was like, hey, I've been like not happy with where I am and where I'm going. And I feel like I've had all this success and about my background a little bit in terms of what the things that I've done. And I love doing different things. And I was like, and I always feel like I'm moving really fast. And he was like, hey, let's pray on it. And we prayed on it. And he was like, I had a little vision of you. And I was like, what's that? He's like, I see Jesus standing there and you're just flying right past him, just boom, right? Oh gosh. and I was like, and he was like, it seems like that's where your life is. Like you're not slowing down for nobody, right? And I was like, that makes sense. And then we prayed a little bit more and he was like, I see you in the future sitting on a bench, right? Next to Jesus. And it's a lot more peaceful and you're at peace. Like that's really interesting, right? So 2 years later, after that opportunity, I had an opportunity to talk to Pastor Trent again, and I was sharing with him like where I am now. And at this point, I feel like Jesus is in front of me, and he's kind of guiding me and showing me where to go. So whether it's your spiritual leader, whether it's your friends and family, definitely try to find that right role model in your life to follow. Mentors, coaches, right? Yeah. And then slow down. Listen, take the advice because they might help you. And it's interesting because, so, okay, since we're on topic, my pastor also shared another story with me. He said that, God, I'm going to mess this up, but that's okay. We'll just put it in God's hands and hopefully he'll bring the words to my mouth. He's like, the pastor's driving to church on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. Right? And he runs out of gas. And he hops out of the car and he starts pushing the car down the road. Right? And the people from his congregation start passing him. And a couple of them stop and they're like looking at him and they're like, Pastor, where you going? Yeah. And he's like, I'm out of gas. And he's trying to push the car all the way to church. Wow. And the church is like still a mile away or 2 miles away. And they look at him and they're like, well, there's a gas station right there. He's like, but I'm late to church, right? So the moral of the story there is sometimes we're so in a hurry to get to our destination
that we miss out what's right in front of us.
That we miss out on what we need, right? Yeah. So if you just pull into the gas station, slow down a little bit, fill the tank up, you'll probably get to the church a lot sooner, right?
Definitely.
So it's that kind of thought process. And it's the same type of thinking I bring as a CMO to my clients. I tell them, hey, look, before you self-diagnose your problem and jump into, I need a logo or I need a website or I need direct mail, why don't we slow down and let's evaluate if that's what you really need? Because if we start going down this road, right, and it's not what we needed, we just wasted a lot of time and energy doing something that wasn't going to get you the results you were looking for. So let's stop think about what we're doing, evaluate what your circumstances and your situation is, and then get back on the road.
Sounds like you're the doctor of this whole kind of world of sales, marketing, and branding.
I think everybody's going to bring different perspective. I think a CSO would understand. I think I would talk to even good CFOs who've had, dealt with marketing budgets. But yeah, I don't think you do anything else that way. If you get a DUI tomorrow, or you get arrested, or somebody sues you, you're not going to go into court on your own and try to defend yourself. You're going to get an attorney. If tomorrow you're not feeling well, and a lot of people do this, they try to play doctor on their own, and then they go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, why didn't you come see me 2 months ago, right, when you were first having these problems? Yeah. But more often than not, people will go to a doctor. If your car breaks down, unless you're handy yourself, you go to a mechanic. But marketing, in a weird way, and sales, in a weird way, people try to do it themselves. But that's kind of like, again, I think it's that entrepreneurial spirit of being motivated and being like, oh, I can do this, but you're not a subject matter expert, right? So we can all probably put 2 pieces of stick on our legs and, wrap it when you think your leg's broken. And if you were stuck in the wilderness, that would make sense, but we're not stuck in the wilderness, right? Yeah. There's all this information, there's technology, Google, now there's AI. Heck, you can sit there for hours and just ask AI questions about marketing, right?
You can.
And get a whole bunch of answers.
Oh, yeah.
But then the question is, are people slowing down long enough? And then you even know what questions to ask.
Right.
See, that goes back to the 90% of what we don't even know. So if you talk to someone that understands it, they might shed light or provide a direction or a path that you didn't even know was possible.
Yeah, my mentor says that a lot. The quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions that you ask.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to say, shout out to my uncle. Last week I heard him trying to be his own doctor. He was saying that he was sick, and he's like, "Yeah, I got this medicine from the last time that I was sick." He was like writing the symptoms. He's like, "I have this, this, and this. So every like 6 hours, I just gotta take this pill." So shout out to him. If it works, awesome. But you gotta go check out a doctor, bro.
Yeah, I mean, again. There's over-counter medicine, right? There's things that are common sense, but then there's sometimes things that are going to impact your life in a pretty big way. And I think if you're about to start a business, your family is relying on you. You're relying on yourself. If you're hiring employees, they're relying on you.
Oh, yeah.
So, the accountability and responsibility just increased. Your clients are relying on you.
Everybody.
Right? So if you're telling your clients that you're going to be able to achieve certain goals or do certain things for them, and then you're not doing your due diligence to make sure that you can provide the best service, that's not going to work. We don't do PR, but I just finished a curriculum on, PR and advertising because I wanted to better understand how I could integrate it into my clients' capabilities. Not that I would perform it, but in the future, if we were going to bring in a PR specialist, I wanted to understand how PR ties into sales, marketing, and branding, as an example.
I know a PR guy, if you need an intro.
Yeah. So same thing, just finished a course at MIT on artificial intelligence and business strategy.
Nice.
I feel like in the current ecosystem, it's such an important part of what we're doing in marketing and literally touches every part of marketing. So the ecosystem is getting more and more sophisticated every single day. It's constantly growing and evolving. So I think that's the hardest thing in business these days. Finding someone who's had enough experience touching all of these different mediums and channels and functions, and then understands how to potentially integrate and implement it into your business. You can go and try to do it on your own, but I wouldn't recommend that because you're just going to spend millions of dollars making the same mistake somebody else has already made, right? If you wanted to manufacture a tire, you probably wouldn't go out and formulate how to make a tire on your own. You'd go to talk to people who build tires and say, hey, I have an idea. Michelin. Oh, here's a mistake I made. I should have put royalties into that agreement. I would have been really rich right now. Really cool story, actually. We were approached by Alstom, which is a French manufacturing firm that makes the Acela train for Amtrak, right? So when they approached us, they were bidding on high-speed trains in California. There was an opportunity to bid on high-speed trains, manufacturing high-speed trains for California. What ended up happening was that they were working with a French firm to create the brand package for the proposal that they were going to pitch to California.
Okay.
Now, when we got the brand package, and by the way, I have to give a shout out to our founder and chief creative officer, Sam. Sam was really integral in evaluating the package. But ultimately, what happened was they came to us and they said, we have this brand package we're going to present. We wanted to get a U.S. firm's perspective. Lo and behold, we were lucky enough to be responsive, had a footprint in the U.S., that they found our firm, reached out to us. And at the time, we had what we referred to as a 9-step process. We still follow it, but that's not our primary capability anymore. But we had this 9-step process, and the first 4 or 5 steps perfectly fit what their needs were. So when we pitched to them that we could do this evaluation, they were like, it's perfect. Go ahead and do the first 4 to 5 steps. So when we evaluated the brand, we noticed that it was kind of funny. They were kind of pandering to the U.S. marketplace. French company, U.S., brand is red, white, and blue. Right? Yeah. Typical, kind of cheesy, right?
Yeah.
Red, white, and blue. They didn't really understand their target market. We talked about how branding, you have to know who you're pitching to.
Right.
So what we did was we went and tried to understand better who the decision makers were and within this body, and we did some research on the board and who it was that acquired these trains, and we looked at their branding and their messaging, marketing, and the things they were already doing as a company. And we found that there was a certain design style, certain color palette that they were utilizing on their Acela trains. And Amtrak had recently changed. You remember Amtrak's brand? It was kind of like the U.S. Postal Service had the red, white, and blue. Even Amtrak changed their logo on the front of their trains.
Really?
So what we ended up doing was we tried to take some of that sensibility and tie it to the branding of this new U.S. high-speed trains branding that was going to be on this package that was going to Anyways, ultimately, we made some suggestions. The company turned around and said, hey, we want you. We were supposed to make the recommendations to the French firm to make the changes, but they decided that they wanted us to make the changes ourselves. We ended up getting recruited to do the changes as well. We made the changes, submitted the changes. That ended up being the final brand package that went out, and that led to a $1 billion contract. So,
nice.
So it's a little tongue-in-cheek number, but in terms of what they spent versus what they were able to get out of it, it calculates out to about a 66,000% return on investment. But it's a really powerful story because it really goes to show the power of having a brand that resonates with the target audience you're pitching it to. So you could just be hyper-focused on the medium and the channel. Here's a brochure, here's a package, here's a video. But if you don't have the right language and the right tone, it's not going to have the same effect.
Definitely. Important keys. Wow. I've learned so much. I feel like I've grown so much just talking to you. I super appreciate you coming out, making the time. Now you're a very busy man with a lot of important things to do. So it means
always
a
make
lot.
Time for you, Elias. It's a pleasure. We're gonna have to build an F1 Formula car, and when you go big with the podcast and you got your podcast F1 Formula car, I'll be the one that'll do the branding for you.
Let's do it. Oh, that'd be awesome. Can't wait. Stop putting ideas in my mind. I would love that, dude. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate you. You're a great friend, and to many more.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. That is episode number 5 of the Level Up Project.